For those of you that haven't had the opportunity to meet me, my name is Brandon Rayborn, and really excited to just be here today to help talk more about BlackLine and the power of what it can do, and specifically within the account reconciliation product, that integrated worksheet control. For the system administrators out there, in order to get the integrated worksheet to appear like you're going to see in the live demo today, you'll just have to navigate as business or system admin to settings. And underneath settings, you would go to reconciliation templates. And from there, you can navigate to one of the 9, standard templates that are out of the box that every client receives when they get their first kind of login to BlackLine. I would recommend, and it is a best practice, that you clone that template, add the integrated worksheet template control, or the integrated worksheet with calculated balance template control. And when we get into the live demo, I'll kind of point out the difference between those two, and then save that new template as a new and separate template. In other words, you want to keep the 9 standard reconciliation templates untouched and always just clone off of those to create some more custom templates for your organization. If there's any questions or comments or concerns around what I've said, please, by all means, reach out. We at Sensiba eat and breathe and sleep BlackLine all day, every day. This is what we do 100% of the time, devoted to helping clients and customers out there to not only optimize their experience with their instance of BlackLine, but to unlock the true potential and the true value of what was in all likelihood promised during the sales cycle and perhaps not fully realized by you as the customer or the client. So without further ado, what I'd like to do today is kind of move into our live demonstration phase of this video. So I am logged into one of our partner Sensiba instances in Sandbox, and you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, I have created a custom logo called Initech Corporation, and that's really the instance that we're going to be focused on today. For any Office-based fans out there, you might recognize Initech Corporation in that logo. We also have the period end date. So we are going to be logging into the October 31st, 2022 period. Although I will tell everyone that the period, as far as which reconciliation template controls you're using, isn't as important as really ensuring that the right template is assigned to the right individual or group's account. Okay, and I think that piece of administration would have to be done by a local business or system administrator within your organization. And then finally, I'm logged in as Brandon Rayborn and as preparer. So we're going to be focused today on the preparer role within account reconciliation. So I'm primarily kind of focused on this reconciliation certification status grid. And if I hit the little refresh button, because you can see it hadn't been refreshed until 7 minutes ago, I'm going to let that process run, and it'll say, okay, a few seconds ago it got updated. You'll notice we're toggled to team assignments. And so because I have access to this particular team, I'm able to drill down and see that we have an Atlanta deposits account with a $68,799.66 balance. And there's some other information in here that it's in the not prepared status, but we're going to go ahead and drill down into this reconciliation and take a look at what the integrated worksheet will actually look like in practice. And we're going to go through an example of performing this deposit reconciliation. Before I get into, the obvious kind of middle area here that you'll notice looks like a version of Excel, which is the integrated worksheet, and that's going to be our primary focus today. I would like to just briefly cover why you would even care about the integrated worksheet, okay? And so when we think about the journey that customers undertake as they adopt BlackLine, it can be really useful to think of it on a continuum. And so the most simple and the most basic way of using BlackLine is to merely log into BlackLine, add any supporting items that are necessary to get the unidentified difference in GL balance to tie, and then to certify after attaching the relevant Excel or other documentation that's residing outside of BlackLine. So that's really just using BlackLine effectively as a workflow management tool. Okay, and it would be something that maybe an organization would start their journey there, but ultimately they want to get to the point where they're bringing more and more data and information into the system itself. Okay, now on the other end of the spectrum, I would be adding supporting items for all of the transactions and details that comprise the $68,799.66 deposit balance that I have in our Atlanta entity. And so really, if you think about it, bringing in all the information may not necessarily make sense for every balance sheet account. Likewise, bringing in just like merely attaching the supporting reconciliation at the bottom of your BlackLine account reconciliation and having the user kind of add a supporting item that plugs the number for the unidentified difference and says, refer to the attached support for more detail. That's not bringing enough detail into BlackLine oftentimes for the approvers and the reviewers out there. So I like to think of the integrated worksheet as a middle ground in that continuum between both kind of extreme ends that I just outlined. And so the integrated worksheet can be a really nice way to bring more information into BlackLine, but not necessarily require that a user, a preparer, completely get out of Excel. One other quick point of housekeeping is, so I kind of alluded to this earlier, there's actually two different template controls associated with the integrated worksheet. One has a calculated balance field and the other does not. So really deciding which one you need is as straightforward to me as, ultimately, do you want a number on the spreadsheet that gets imported to be reflected in this calculated balance field, which will then impact the unidentified difference and therefore get you closer to being able to click on the certify button as a preparer? If the answer is yes, then I recommend you use the integrated worksheet with calculated balance. If the answer is no, I don't necessarily want this to impact my unidentified difference, I'm merely bringing this information into BlackLine to give my approvers and reviewers more detail and information that surrounds what the underlying transactions are. And then in that case, I would say just use the standard integrated worksheet. Okay. Now, a couple of other points here. This is not an official Microsoft licensed product. And the reason that I emphasize that is because this is not a full replacement for Excel, nor should it be viewed that way. What I like to think of this integrated worksheet kind of feature is something that BlackLine programmed internally within the company to allow users to import information from spreadsheet systems out there, primarily being Excel. And it has a lot of great features in it. You can add conditional formatting. You can format certain values as a table. You could add certain style elements like bolding and underlining and wrapping text. If I kind of move over to the data tab, you'll see the ability to group or ungroup transactions as well as to filter. We can also even add some validation elements, right? So we can have like a drop-down menu that would allow us to input whatever the values are for that underlying data validation drop-down menu. And then there's some other kind of comments and the ability to add spark lines within that data tab. And finally, as I move over to the view tab, I can freeze and unfreeze panes, and that's kind of primarily what the focus of that tab would allow users to do. Okay, so I like to think of this as a simplified version of Excel, not a replacement, that will allow users to import spreadsheets directly from Excel in a very effective, efficient, and just simple manner. Okay, so that's what I want to demo today. So I'm going to click on this import button here. And when I do, it's going to ask me to go navigate over to my file. So I'm just going to navigate over to the cloud-based system. We use Box here that allows me to select this file. So I can either select the file and click open, or I could drag the file and drop it into this little box down here and it will import. Okay, either way would have been an effective way to do this. You'll notice that BlackLine quickly refreshed the browser page in my Chrome browser, and now I have detail that is brought in that's outlining what the deposits are for this given account for this October 31st period. And the very first kind of deposit relates to this Australia office space and kind of comprises the majority of the balance. It's a little bit hard to me to see this in this format. So what I might do is look to kind of highlight these cells right here, go back to the home screen, and maybe in style, I might come in here and say, if we can give me, oh, I thought there was a way to get it with an amount. And another thing that I kind of noticed is it's a little hard to see these header elements here. So if I wanted to come in here, I could do Control B, or again, I could go into style and say, hey, give me this as bold, and let's maybe make this, underline as well, right? Makes it a little bit easier to see. I can also kind of come in here and freeze panes for this top row. So that way it will allow me to, let's see here, scroll down and keep that header kind of relevant at the top of the integrated worksheet. You can also come in here and add formulas. So one of the things that you'll notice is if I sum up all these amounts, it should get us pretty close to what our ending GL balance is for this account for the period, but there is no subtotal. And so I want to come in here and just start typing in sum, and then we're going to come in and say, okay, we'll give us these three fields summed together. And when I do that, you'll see it added them up, and it got to the $68,799.66. And I could come in here and say, okay, give me the subtotal, and let's make this bold and underlined. And now we have a subtotal amount that really comprises the exact balance of our GL balance. And the delta there is that 10% deposit reserve that this account just so happens to have kind of sitting out there. And so I could have brought these three items in as supporting items. This is relatively small number or small volume. But in this case, I just wanted to show you kind of a simple example of how I could also pull it into the integrated worksheet. Once I have my data pulled into the integrated worksheet and my subtotal amount input here, I can take this balance, come over to this little blue hyperlink and click Set Balance. And from there, you'll notice the page will refresh. The balance is now reflected in this calculated balance field, and it will tell me, hey, this is coming from cell B5 on your integrated worksheet. And as I scroll down, you'll notice my unidentified difference got to 0. And therefore, if I continue to scroll down, I now have the ability to certify this reconciliation. And it can be really simple to bring large amounts of information into this integrated worksheet here. What's very prominently displayed kind of in the center of this reconciliation can be a useful tool for organizations out there across the balance sheet, across multiple different accounts, to be able to really emphasize what they want their approvers and their reviewers to see specifically, okay? Another couple of points. I know that I just brought in one tab in this spreadsheet, but it will allow you to bring in multiple tabs. I've seen cases where you might have a lead sheet tab that summarizes the underlying transactions. And there could be a series of other tabs with the actual list of transactions that are getting you to kind of that summarized lead sheet page. Couple of other thoughts. If you have macro enabled spreadsheets, it will not play nicely with macro enabled spreadsheets. So I would encourage you to deactivate or to strip out those macros and kind of save it as a more simplified spreadsheet before uploading. There is kind of a size limit to how large of an Excel spreadsheet can be loaded. That size is not exactly precisely set, but I can tell you that, if you've got like a 40 megabyte Excel file and it's got huge amounts of data and it takes a long time to calculate and potentially crashes within Excel, then you might want to consider pulling out some of the key information, maybe the lead sheet, and copying it into a separate workbook and pasting special values so that you can upload that lead sheet. In cases where the amount of data or the volume of data is kind of exceeding what this little tool is really designed for, you can always come in and attach any remaining supporting documentation at the bottom of a reconciliation. So really, I just like to think of the integrated worksheet as a middle ground. It's a compromise where we're bringing more detail into BlackLine. We are providing more transparency for the approvers and reviewers, but we're doing it in a thoughtful way that allows the preparers not to take on a large amount of extra work for not necessarily getting the added benefit. So with that, I encourage everyone on the call to consider going out, picking your sandbox environment up, maybe creating that integrated worksheet cloned reconciliation template, go out and assign it to a couple of test reconciliations and play around with it a little bit and see if this is something that can help your organization be better and more effective in your BlackLine subscription. I have seen a number of different clients out there love this feature, really use it a lot, and get a lot of benefit from it. And that's true in the mid-market space. Think smaller organizations, maybe 5 to 50 users. And it's also true in the enterprise level space, very large organizations with hundreds or in some cases thousands of users.